Good morning and welcome to Scotland Speaks at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and we are back in the studio after being out and about on the road, and we brought you the Alba Party leadership elections followed by 3 episodes of what happened at Alba Party conference. And we had some great debates, and thank you very much indeed for the comments you have sent in their respect, in particular into the one around independent strategy, which is of course key, given that in the past week or so we've had some excellent polling for yes, putting us 12 points ahead of no in an independence vote. And along with that, the Alba Party has also had some great news, with polls putting us at 7% in the regional ballot. That is your second vote, the list vote, where Alba Party supporters and indeed independent supporters are being encouraged to vote. List vote Alba on that second vote. Alba, of course, is on the ascendancy, and 7% is just the beginning. 7%, of course, translates, according to Professor John Curtis, 7 independent supporting MSPs from the Alba Party in the Parliament. But just imagine if we were to increase that number several fold, what that Parliament could look like. And of course, the Alba Party is saying that that second vote, that vote is a vote for independence, not a referendum, not another electoral test, but that is the electoral test for independence. So in the coming weeks and leading up to that important Scottish parliamentary election, we will be talking all things about that election and how to use your vote so it's not wasted, and how to vote positively for independence. Now, along with what's been happening on the independence front, a lot's been happening on the women front. And guess what? Women are women, yes, as declared by the Supreme Court, but some of us knew that already, didn't we? However, the fallout continues in Scotland and of course across the... And to that end, I am delighted to be joined today in the studio by our newly elected Alba Women's Convener, Kirsty Fraser. He'll also be joined by our newly elected Equalities Convener, Suzanne Blackley, where we'll be talking all things women and equality. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back to Scotland Speaks, and I am delighted to be joined by our National Women's Convener, Kirsty Fraser, and our National Equalities Convener, Suzanne Blackley. Welcome both of you to Scotland Speaks. Kirsty, I know this is your first time on the show. Is it the first time for you, Suzanne?
Yes.
Well, welcome. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to start in the name of the person whom this show is continuing, which is the late great Alex Salmond, Scotland's greatest ever leader. And I know you both have had the opportunity in your time in the movement to spend some time with Alex, and I thought it would be a really nice idea maybe to come to you with any stories that you might have. Suzanne, you've mentioned to me previously about Alex visiting your school. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, for a bit of background, my late father was a shop steward for ICI, and so our family for generations have been Labour voters, so it was a Labour household. But my dad from a young age had me, I would come home from school and other children would be watching cartoons. My dad would have me watching the lunchtime politics show that he'd recorded on VHS, that's how long ago that was. Question time, all those kind of things, because he felt that it was so important for me to understand politics, and that was from about 7, 8 years old. So when I was 14, Alex actually visited my secondary school to talk to my year about politics. Now, everybody else in that room probably had no idea who he was, but because of my dad's teachings, I knew exactly who he was, and I think that I probably questioned him like he was some sort of spy.
Was he a First Minister then, or MP
No.
then, or was he down at Westminster?
Yes.
Right.
But as Alex did, he dealt with every nagging question that I threw at him very gracefully and with humour, as he always did. And I came away from that day, that was what first sowed the seeds of looking more into an independent Scotland, so it had a big impact on me. And in moving forward, obviously when I joined Alba, I'd been an SNP for years. I'd never had the opportunity to meet Alex during that time. And then the first time that I met Alex after joining Alba was we did a candidate shoot in Melrose for the 2021 elections. And I never got a chance to speak to him before the cameraman had us set up. So he had us kind of in a staggered line. And Alex was behind me. And the photographer was saying, right, some big smiles, and we were doing big smiles, and then the next thing it was like the serious faces look like you're focused, and we're standing there. Well, then Alex starts doing his Sean Connery impressions behind me, and I'm standing there trying to keep this straight face, and the cameraman's looking at me as if to say, what are you doing? You're not looking serious. And I'm saying, and it got to the point I kept getting this look for this cameraman. I thought, I'm fed up of getting this dirty look for this cameraman. I turned around to Alex and I says, do you want to pack it in? And I remember Chris standing at the side, looked like he was going to have a stroke at me talking to Alex like that. It was really funny, but we got on so well.
Did you pack it in?
Yes, he did. He says, that's me told off. Yeah. And after that, I think, through all the time, I think I learned so much from him. And we had a really good working relationship. We had this kind of banter that we did between us. He would phone me if I wasn't well, or if you told him that I wasn't well, and he would say, is there anything that you need? And I was like, well, there's 3 kids here if you want to look after them. He's like, is there anything else you need, Suzanne? So, but, he was a mentor for all of us within the party, and that's why he's going to be so missed.
Lovely memories. Thank you, Suzanne. Now, Kirsty, Fraser, you were on the campaign trail with Alex Salmond in Castlemilk, but you had quite a good time. That was a great election for you. Tell us a bit about that.
I get what Suzanne's saying. He's a total troublemaker. I was examining a drain, as you do on the campaign trail, because there was a wee man.
The glamour of politics,
yeah,
Kirsty.
He was complaining, they'd basically been trapped in their houses because of this blocked drain. So the wee man's talking about to me, and then Alex sort of came round the corner and he said, oh, just the man. And Alec was talking to him and he was like, geez, want to come in for a cup of tea? So we were like, okay. So we went in, we're sitting there, and the man had said, I'm a Labour man, but that didn't deter Alec at all. So we had a cup of tea and we're sitting, and the two of them started talking about bridges. And I was sort of sitting there, and out the corner of my eye, I could see you going up and down the street looking for us because we'd just disappeared. And I sort of said to him, should we not maybe go out now? And he's like, oh, she's all right. She'll be okay. She'll be fine. Then after a few moments, it was as though he did think like, oh, better. So out we popped. And at that point, you were like, where have you been? We were like, oh, we were just in that house having a cup of tea. But he was, as Suzanne says, he was an absolutely incredible mentor. He had such a way with people, and he was incredible, and he always had a bit of advice, and he always used to say to me, just be yourself, you're a brilliant candidate, just be yourself, don't try and be anybody else, don't emulate anybody else, just be yourself. And I honestly, he's so missed, I think.
And you, wonderful woman, stood up to the plate because, of course, we had to make a decision in the party as to what we were going to do. Did we even was it in us, did we have the ability, the energy, the drive to honour his memory in amongst so much sadness, which we've decided that we were going to do. And you both put yourselves forward for national convenership positions. So, Kirsty, you are our National Women's Convener. What a time to be our Women's Convener, because so much has happened in the past week. And let's Let's move on first of all, before we get to the politics of it, your priorities in the role and why you stood to be Women's Convener and what we can expect from you as our leader in that respect.
So the very reason I joined the Alba party was because I was completely homeless politically. And from the very beginning, I was like, right, we're going to have women's backs. So when I decided to stand, it was because I wanted a women's voice, because we didn't know where anything was going to go. We didn't know what was going to happen.
This was around the time of the introduction of the gender recognition reform bill.
It was, and I just thought, and we need to continue to have that voice. And I felt, what a better time to put myself forward. It's not something I've wanted to do before. I'm more a sort of float about in the background complaining type of person, but I thought it's time to step up to the plate.
We know your sort.
So I kind of, a few Alba women said to me, why don't you stand? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And they were like, just do it. And I was like, but Alba women are strong. That's the beauty of Alba women. They're all very strong. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll step up. So goals-wise, obviously, I've got to understand not every single woman in Alba is a feminist. So I've got to represent every woman in Alba. So at the minute, we've had all this going on in the last week with the Supreme Court ruling. So moving forward, I need to bring other women in and find out what they want from me. And that's the key, it's to find out what they want and what I can do.
That's great. That's really good to hear, Kirsty. And, I'd say huge congratulations on your elections. I mean, the work, when women have been fighting for equality since whenever, and it's certainly not over yet.
No.
And the ruling, although we'll turn to, was a clarification of sorts. Work for equality, equal pay, equal rights in employment, and all of these are ongoing battles. But we'll turn to that in a second. Suzanne, our newly elected Equalities convener. So your brief straddles a whole load of Equalities headings. So tell us a bit about that and what you plan to do in your role.
Well, my background is primarily in care. I've been working within care since I left school. I trained as a nurse right out of school when I was 18. So I've worked primarily within social care for the past 2 decades, and I've met people from all walks of life with different illnesses, addiction problems, children from parents with addiction problems. That's what I did when I first started working in social care. I was working primarily with children from them kind of homes. And so I've always been the kind of person who wants to, and that's the reason I wanted to get into politics. I want to help people any way that I can. And so, my remit has been, since Alex appointed me last year as the interim Equalities convener, was to listen to the members and be guided by the members and take forward ideas that they wanted to look into further. And so the first meeting that I'll be holding in a couple of weeks' time will be a suggestion from a suggestion box that I had at the conference. And so that's how I will continue. I want every member in the party to have a voice, every member to feel that they can have their say on different subjects across the board.
And of course you were key at conference, and our viewers have had the opportunity to see some of the highlights of introducing, Jim, who's neurodivergent, and he had the opportunity to speak at conference. Tell us a bit about how important that was.
Jim, right from the word go, Jim and I have gotten very well because I have a son with autism. And so when I look at Jim, I see my son's future. And so it was always very important for me to have Jim as involved as possible. And when I went to him and asked if he would speak at the conference, it was it's not something that he's comfortable doing, but he said, it's important to you and it'll be important to the party. There's a lot of people in the party that probably don't, we don't know that they're neurodivergent or they're a carer of someone who is. And he said, this is the best way that we can get our voice out there. So that's why we brought him forward, and he was such a hit. The comments that I've had from members, it's been so inspirational for people, and I was so proud of him that day, absolutely.
I think the conference was great for members, those who were able to make it, and of course we've got a national council coming up, and then another national conference this year. And Kirsty, I have no doubt that you're thinking about how you're going to be organising women and giving them opportunities to come together and discuss policy issues as we move towards a Women's Manifesto for 2026?
Yeah, definitely. I think the main thing is, we're continuing to keep an eye on what's going on in the Scottish Government, because they're going to be slippy with this. But certainly moving forward, I was thinking as well, the women in the party as well, I was thinking we need a banner. We actually need a handmade Alba banner to take on marches, etc. So I'm going to be roping some crafty women into doing that within the party. But definitely with our Women's Manifesto, we need to keep our eye on the ball. It's all well and good. They tried to slip through the change in the legal definition of a woman. So what else are they going to try and slip through? So it is really important. We've got the Unbuyable Bill going through that Ash Regan's putting through. That's being presented on the 20th of May.
And of course, it was a very successful event in Glasgow.
Yes, it was a really well attended event. Lots of women coming together. Some not in Alba, most in Alba. But it was a really well attended event, and it was fantastic and knowledgeable, because the Unbuyable Bill, the thing about it is a lot of people don't really understand the law surrounding prostitution. So it really did raise a lot of awareness and answered a lot of women's questions. So moving forward, we will be pushing that as well.
And Ash has been a tremendous voice in the Scottish Parliament. Still remains the only politician who resigned her position as Minister in Nicola Sturgeon's government on this point of principle.
Yes.
And being vindicated entirely in the points that she was making and trying to advise the government were the correct points, but it all fell on deaf ears, and so here we are. The Alba 2026 Women's Manifesto will be very important, and we will run it past for Women Scotland, who scored our manifesto, you might remember, in the 2021 elections very highly because of our stance on women, and I know we're in safe hands to ensure, Kirsty, that we score highly. And let's speak about For Women Scotland and the recent judgement. At the end of the day, 3 Scottish mums had to take the cause of women and how you define women to the highest court in the whole of the United Kingdom. How did we get there, Kirsty?
So it's absolutely incredible, because none of these women are lawyers. None of these women are, they're mums, as we say. One's a farmer up in the north of Scotland, and they actually met on Mumsnet. What they'd kind of seen was when in 2018 it was, a woman is, according to the Scottish Government, a woman is anyone that has a GRC. And everyone was like, no, this isn't right. You're actually changing words here. That's not correct. So how did we get here was sheer stubbornness, I think, from a certain group of MSPs and lobby groups. And it's absolutely ridiculous that we did get here. And the cost to the Scottish taxpayer has been horrendous. And the fact that they've just continued, and they'll probably continue to, we've seen Maggie Chapman sort of saying that she feels like nobody was included in the discussions. It's a Supreme Court. You don't have like a sit down to discuss it. So this is where we've ended up. The UK government yesterday accepted that is, they have to, I think I heard Keir Starmer say clarity more than I've ever heard the word used in my life. And this has now been proven, and that is the bottom line. And ultimately there's 3 things came from this. There's the legal definition, there's protecting trans rights, that's the thing. They're still completely protected under the Equalities Act, and also it is going to confirm all legislation moving forward.
So the ramifications are absolutely huge. I mean, for women who've been fighting this battle, just to say, look, the Equality Act states what we are, we're entitled to our sex-based rights. This is really just a clarification that shouldn't have been required. Yeah. The law required to be observed. It is clear then that both Scottish and UK governments have been working or acting out with the law. Guidance has been issued out with the legal framework, and therefore that all has to be adjusted. And this is a pile of work that's going to have to be done. The cost, as you rightly say, Kirsty, not only will the Scottish government, the Scottish taxpayer have to pay the Scottish government fees, but also the fees of the winning side at the Supreme Court. In terms of the ramifications, Suzanne, I'll come to you. Even in a hospital environment, we have the case of Sandy Peggy currently at tribunal stage. Like, can't comment too much on something that's ongoing. But the point is, we know that there have been hospitals that have not been providing single-sex spaces for care and even for their staff. What is this now going to mean?
Well, I mean, it just shows you how ridiculous things have come, that a hospital does not respect the Equality Act, which was put in place to protect and to promote the rights of people. That's what the fundamental reason for the Equality Act being written was, to protect people. And a hospital, somewhere where you should feel safe, is not protecting people. And to go back to what you asked Kirsty, this has all come about because of politicians not listening. We've seen it just recently with the assisted dying bill in Westminster. If you only invite people, if you go in there with a predetermined idea of what you want the result to be of something, and you only invite people in that agree with you on that, you are never going to create something that is going to, that's going to have any substance.
And that indeed was the case around the consultation around the gender recognition reform bill, because there wasn't a consultation. There were women's groups crying out, please. There were, even in Parliament itself, whether it was Michelle Thompson, whether it was Ash, amendments being suggested that would have prevented certain circumstances, but yet they didn't listen. Do you think they are going to listen now?
Well, they're going to have no option, as far as I'm concerned. People are going to start. I mean, if you look at it, we are three women. We have all grown up in the same circumstances, that from a very, very early age, we have been told to protect ourselves from men. We have been told not to walk the streets by ourselves after a certain time. We have been told that we tell someone where we're going. We have been taught this from an early age, and then the Scottish Government officials seem to think that they can then say, well, you shouldn't do that. You should let whoever that says that they're a woman into your safe spaces, somewhere that you had drummed into you from an early age that you have to protect yourself from. And then the hypocrisy of the whole thing is, some of these people will be going home to their own daughters and still telling them to not walk the streets that night because a man might attack them. That until men stop attacking women, women have to protect themselves. They have to have safe spaces.
I think this has fundamentally come down to, Kirsty, just common sense. Over a number of years, women, in fact the wider community, have been asked by the Scottish Government not to believe in things that we're taught in biology at school, that are biologically correct and sensible, and to go against the evidence of our own eyes. How far has this set back?
This is the thing as well. I remember a trans woman in the fitting room of a top shop back in the 90s, and we didn't really bat an eye, but when you're told somebody like the double rapist Isla Bryson is a woman, it's gaslighting. They've basically gaslit women. So as Suzanne says, everything we've been taught to protect ourselves, I think the three of us are mums, you tell your kids, protect yourself, especially your daughters, and then to all of a sudden be told, no, you've not to do that because you have to be kind. And that's the thing. Women are now the armour for the rest of the world, and that isn't right. If a trans person doesn't feel safe in the bathroom or the toilet that matches their sex, then that's a man problem, not a woman problem. That is not down to us. We are not the protectors of men. That's ultimately it.
Clearly there's a need for spaces for everybody, and we all believe in equality. We all support what the Equality Act legislation says. Of course we do. And the question is, it's now for politicians to put that into practice, and ensuring the rights of someone doesn't mean you take away from the rights of others, and that is a political responsibility. And speaking of political responsibility, I know that Ash Regan has taken that, and reported Maggie Chapman's remarks to the Standards Commission in the Scottish Parliament simply because of the misrepresentation of the judgment. Yes. How dangerous is it for elected politicians to misrepresent what has been said in the Supreme Court by judges? It's
absolutely, it's, if it wasn't so serious, it would be comedy gold. The fact, that she looked like a student like a teenager. That's what she sounded like yesterday when I watched. Gina Davidson was absolutely fantastic interviewing her, and the fact that she then said, we have MSPs in there who will,
I think she said something along who will speak on behalf of transphobes or something like that.
And you're just sitting going, are you actually saying this out loud? Are you actually? It's a supreme.
It was something along those lines. We don't want to misquote her, but it was something along
those lines. And you're saying to yourself, you're an elected member of the Scottish Parliament, and you're standing there spouting basically student politics. We're angry, this is really, really serious, and to sit there and listen to her was absolutely, it was beggar's belief. But the Faculty of Advocates have come out as well and complained about her. She's, I don't think her positions, especially in the Equalities Committee.
Well, I think people have suggested that she should be considering her position along with many others. We are women, but we also support independence to our very core. And it takes me back to the comments Alex made a couple of years ago on this issue very strongly, in fact, since party's inception, that why would the Scottish Government alight on a topic that doesn't make sense, is against biological fact, and fundamentally may lead to the further splitting of the independence movement. As ever, he was right. We are where we are. The independence movement has been split by this issue. Where do we go from here?
Well, the Scottish Government, they've all came out and said that they accept the judgment of the Supreme Court. They need to stand by that. That's the first thing they need to do. And then they need to start. The biggest problem is, and the easiest way to grow confidence and independence is good governance. Alex always said that. He said good governance, that's what's needed, and that's what they need to get back to. Stop going on off all these wee sidetracks. Focus on what matters to people, to the majority of people that in Scotland that are worried about their energy bills and all the rest of it. That's what people want the Scottish Government to work on, not taking them on wee side jaunts down wee alleyways on different topics that have, look where it's got them, it's come to nothing. They've wasted money, they've wasted parliamentary time, and they're no further forward on that. And that's, the good governance is what they need to get back to. That is what will get us to independence. That's what will convince people that we can govern ourselves.
Kirsty, how much do you think this has affected the cause of independence?
We don't seem to hear very much about independence from the biggest independence party in Scotland anymore. But I think, Alba's been vindicated because, we've stood by women from the very, very start. And I think people are starting to see now that, especially with what's been, more and more people are aware of our fight for women's rights, and we're no longer, bigots or whatever, which we heard a lot at the beginning. I think we'll see a rise in momentum again for, the cause of independence hasn't gone away, but I think people kind of thought, well, the SNP aren't really interested in getting us to independence because they're doing things like this, as Suzanne said. We've got the highest energy bills in Scotland in an energy-rich country. So why are they not focusing on this stuff, but they're taking us down a wee jaunt, a court case that's cost ridiculous amounts of money when they keep claiming we have no money.
And of course, the reputation of the Scottish Parliament, our Scots Parliament and the Scottish Government is important, or it should be, to all Scots. And I know it matters to us in the Alba party, so we can only hope that, well, quite frankly, those in power should be apologising for getting it so terribly wrong, apologising for presiding over the most horrendous atmospheres that women have had to face, and of course putting trans people in a position of great difficulty as a result of their conduct and all of this government's conduct. And we can only hope that they apologise and take it on the chin, as they would say, and move forward as we move into 2026. But Alba has a exceptionally strong part to play in that election, and we'll be coming on to that in weeks to come. But we can't close the show without a huge nod to Marion, Susan and Trina of For Women Scotland. What an epic work they've done. And I think they're not finished yet. They're on their guard.
They're on their guard because what the concern now is that they'll just start to create more unisex spaces. The Scottish Government, they'll try something because they're at this stage it's almost like they are just lobbyists for whatever path they want to go down, but that's them. They've had to say they'll take no further, they won't take the GRA any further, which is incredible. So how they're going to do it, I don't know. How much time they're going to waste, I don't know, but they've been told this is a law and you have to abide by it. So fingers crossed, but For Women Scotland certainly aren't. They're going to be watching this like a hawk. I think they are this week having a wee bit of a rest. Because again, 3 mums.
Yes, indeed.
And
the toll, and of course they've received death threats, horrible letters, all of these things are still going on, and it really must come to an end. And on that point, just one final point from you both about being women in the front line of politics. What's it like? Suzanne.
Well, I mean, for me, I think that it's very difficult because if they don't have anything to say about what you're saying, they will just go for your appearance. They'll go for anything else that they can because they can't argue with what you're saying. That's what I've found. Every time I've opened my mouth on social media, that's what I've found, that people don't actually argue with what I'm saying. They'll just pop at how I look or how I dress or anything like that. That's
social media. But on the doorstep, though?
On the doorstep.
It's completely different, isn't it?
Absolutely different, because people are brave when they're sitting behind a computer, but they're not brave when they're standing face to face with you.
Kirsty, what kind of a space do you think there is for women in politics?
There's plenty of space for women in politics. Will things change? Yeah, they will. They have to change now because, I mean, I've had death threats. I've been abused simply because, of the organisations I'm involved in on the front line of feminism. And even, it's really interesting because when I was campaigning up in Castlemilk, not a crossword was really said to me. But when I went down into sort of like the more sort of middle class area, that's where it was like transphobe was getting shouted at me, bigot, fat, whatever. And I was kind of like, right, okay, that's really weird. And it was always, it was always men doing it. It's interesting, it was always men doing it. And as Suzanne says, they've got nothing to argue with. It's always your appearance they go for, or your age. I'm getting that quite a lot now. I'm a dinosaur, apparently.
Oh, well. Well, there's clearly a lot of healing to do for Scotland. In fact, the whole of the UK, but our concern is, of course, our country of Scotland in the wake of everything that's happened over the past few years, and being vigilant about what's going to happen in the future. And we need to make sure that our Parliament and our politicians are representative of the views of the ordinary people of Scotland, who just want good services, good governance, and things to make sense. And I think from an Alba Party's perspective, with you in your role, Suzanne, as Equalities Convener, and you, Kirsty Fraser, as Women's Convener, the people of Scotland will be in very safe hands, as are the people of this party. Thank you so much for joining me on Scotland Speaks.
Thank you.
And with that, and sadly, because I was enjoying this discussion, we come to the end of this week's episode of Scotland Speaks. And I do hope you've enjoyed hearing from Kirsty and Suzanne as much as I have. And please do send your comments in on this week's show, but make them nice, because as you've heard, women like to hear nice things from time to time. Yeah, we can take the bad comments, but sometimes it's nice to be nice. So send in your nice comments, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Scotland Speaks.